For Chapter 3 in CIST 1510, we're going to look at enhancing a website with links and images. So once we're through with the chapter, you should have mastered the material to describe image file formats, describe the image tag and its attributes, adding images to the website. We'll look at div elements and attributes, using a div element within a web page. We're going to look at the different types of hyperlinks, or create relative links, absolute links, bookmark links, email links, and telephone links. We'll look at lists in an HTML document. You're going to create a ordered list or an unordered list and description list. We're also going to embed a map within a web page and also test and validate our links on a web page. Nowadays, almost all of your modern web pages, all your web pages are going to have images. Images are used throughout your web page to enhance the viewer's experience of viewing your website. It keeps your web page from being just a blank wall of text. It is a visual appealing. It's also can you use for example, businesses, putting the business logo to promote businesses. Provides information about a product or service. So you want to use images to enhance the look and feel of your web page. We see a roadmap that's laid out for images. Add images to a template and to web pages. Add div elements, hyperlinks, lists. Put a map on the web page. View the website in a browser and test the web page links, and also then validate the new pages. Images can include photos, drawings, diagrams, charts, other graphics that are convey visual information. Like I said, it helps break up the text, and it also helps contribute to the overall design of your web page. It makes it more interesting for your users to see text and images rather than just seeing text. But you also want to make sure that your images that you use are appropriate for the subject of your web page and that they support the purpose of the web page or illustrate the content. We have different image files that you can use, the file formats. There are several different file formats. For example, we have a graphics interface format, a GIF, that supports transparency and frame animation. PNG, the portable network graphics, supports transparency, but not animation. Joint photographic experts group, JPEGs, it's a standard file format for digital photos. SVG files, that's a format that uses markup language to create two-dimensional graphics, images, and animations. So we see an example on the screen here of the format and the pros and cons and what they are used for. All right, so the format for the GIF, the pros of this is a small file size. It supports transparency and animation. The cons to using this type of format is it's limited to 256 colors. And it's used for line drawings and animations. PNG is a small file size. It supports transparency. It has more than 1 million colors that can be used. The cons for it does not support animation. And these are used for images that are not digital photos. JPEG supports more than 1 million colors, has a larger file size as its con, and it is used for digital photos. SVG files, they are flexible, scalable. No files are needed because graphics are created with code. The cons of those is they're not supported by older browsers, and not all modern browsers will support the features of SVG as well. These are used for shapes, lines, text, gradients, and so forth. Now your images are going to be made up of pixels. Pixels are the smallest element of light or color on a device that's displaying the images. Common resolution for laptops, maybe the 1366 by 600 or 768 pixels. Now the disadvantage of an image with high resolution is that it also has a large file size. So you want to make sure that you use a graphic or photo editor to optimize an image with a large file size to reduce its file size and load time. The larger a file is, the longer it takes for it to load on your website. So when your image files are very large, it can slow down the load time for your site. When you're working with images, the file name for an image, you want to make sure you give the image a meaningful name. All right, so you see the example here, the img001.jpg. That's going to be most of the default cameras. Their default name is going to give it that, and it'll be 002, 003, and so forth. That doesn't really give you a description of what the picture is, what the image is. So you want to make sure that you rename that file into something that is meaningful. Images also have different tags and attributes. We're going to start off our images, and you'll see that we have an IMG tag. Okay, that is our opening tag. That is our image tag. And inside that tag, we got several different attributes that we're going to place. The SRC, alt, height, width. So in this, the SRC is going to identify the file name of the image to display. So think of this as a link to the file. Alt is going to specify alternate text to display while the image is being loaded. Now this is something that's really useful for screen readers and for to make sure our website is accessible to everyone. Okay, so for screen readers, for example, it translates that information in the alt tag and reads an audio output of what the information is. You want to try to briefly describe the purpose of the image in 125 characters or less. Okay, the height and width are going to define the height and width of a pixel of the image in pixels, which is going to improve the loading time and the size of the image. So we'll break down the code here of a image tag and its attributes. So we'll start off with the image tag. So we got the IMG. This is an open tag, so we don't have a closing image tag. So then we have the SRC logo.png. So this is the file name. Okay, this is when we talked about breaking down things and putting them into different folders. This is where we want to make sure that this file name is in the correct folder. This file is in the correct folder, so we're linking it to it with the SRC. Okay, the alt, this is where we put the alt attribute and the value. So we're saying that this is the company logo. So when the screen reader goes through and reads the website or what may be displayed if our logo doesn't, for some reason, load, it will say company logo. We have our height and then our width set in our image tags as such. All right, a div element that defines an area or division in a web page. And with these, we would use an open and close div tags. We use this to structure parts of the web page. We do this when an HTML5 element doesn't apply to this. So we could also put this within the main element to further divide primary content area into separate sections. So we see an example here of in this wireframe. So we look that we got these different sections we can put into different div elements. So we see here. The div attributes, they're going to give you information about the element. So example, the ID div attribute, that's going to identify a unique area on a web page, and it's going to distinguish it from other page divisions, from other divs tags that are placed on your page. So it will need to be the attribute ID. It will need to be unique to that div. So we see an example here. We got the div ID, and we got this one set to container. Let me blow this up some. All right, so the div ID is set to container. So that element is going to contain all HTML5 elements in this situation. All right, hyperlinks are links to other web pages, both internal and external. It allows you to navigate and build navigation on your web page or website, so you can move from one page to another. A couple things we can use navigation with are hyperlinks. You can build a link, which can be a text or image. It can be other web page content. When the user clicks on it, that's going to instruct the browser to go to the location in a file. You can have text link. It's going to appear as underlined text in a color different from the rest of the web page text when you create those. Image links, it's just going to be an image where you can click on the image and it will take you to another location on the website or another web page, external web page, or maybe an internal website web page as well. You can also use an anchor element. These are used to create a hyperlink to a web page. So we're going to use the anchor tags, the A tags, as the start and the end tags. In this, we're going to include the href attribute in the starting tag, because that's going to identify the web page, email, telephone number, file, wherever that link is taking us. So that's going to contain the content for the link. Relative links are links to other web pages within the same website. So think of this as like your navigation. Okay, so you have a home page, an about page, a store page, and whatever pages are inside of your website. So you would create an anchor link. And this is going to designate the file name of the web page or the path of the and the file name of the web page. So let's look at relative links. So we're going to start off with our starting anchor tag. So we have our A tag, and inside here we've got our href attribute and then the name of the file that this is going to link to. So the name of our file is actually index.html. What we want our users to see is the text that appears between our opening and closing anchor tags. So in this case, they would see the word home. Home would be the actual link to the the index.html file. And then we have our closing anchor tag there as well. All right, absolute links. These are hyperlinks to at least other web pages outside of the website. You create these the same way. You create using the anchor element with the href that's going to have the attribute that designates the website URL. So we'll look at this. So what we're going to do here is you'll see the difference. Let me remove this here. So this is an absolute link. So here we got our anchor tag, we got our href, and inside here we got the URL. So we got our HTTP protocol, and then we have our google.com. Okay, that's all going to be within our opening anchor tag. We got the text, Google, and then our ending anchor tag. So to look at the difference between these two, okay, the top code here, this is a relative link. You notice that we just have to do the index.html because it is an internal link to our website. This file will be uploaded to our server. Where in the absolute link, we have to put the HTTP and then the www dot, say, google.com. So relatives, you can think of that as it's part of our website where absolute is going to an external site. All right, sometimes you're going to look at a web page that's got a lot of content, and it makes that page really long. So to kind of cut down on the required excessive scrolling to see all of the content, you can place bookmarks. Bookmarks lets a user jump to a specific area on the page. Now, to create these, we're going to usually insert an ID attribute and a value in the element, and that lets you see whether you can include a bookmark. And then next, you would create a link to the bookmark. Think of this as like a table of contents. Like when you go to, say, Wikipedia. And on Wikipedia, as you'll see here, Wikipedia has content. And so if I scroll through all this content, it's a lot of scrolling. But for example, if I want to jump just to the, say, senses and feeding section, I can. Okay, so in here, I am creating a bookmark to this section. You can also use images to link to another page within the site. You can use them to link to another website, email address, telephone number. So, for example, looking at this code here, we got our opening anchor tag. We got our href attribute, the name of the file to link to. Now, inside of this, we're going to put the image tag. Okay, so we're closing the A tag. So where we would normally put just the text, so where we had the word home, last time we were using the index.html. In this situation, we are using an actual image. So we put an image tag. We put the Forward Fitness logo. We have the alt tag listed here, the alt attribute, set our height and width, and then we have our ending anchor tag. You can also use email links, hyperlink to an email address. With this, you would use the href attribute followed by the mail to and then the email address. So looking at this, blow this up. So we got our starting anchor tag, href. We're using the mail to protocol. So we put the mail to, then we'll put the email address. Now this is still, once again, the text that's going to be viewable to the user that they will click on, and then the closing attribute tag. Telephones can be done the same way. You include the href attribute followed by the telephone plus one number. Now the plus one is going to be the international dialing prefix, and number is going to be the phone number. So we see href, we're using the telephone protocol, the phone number to dial. And here, this is the text that the users will click on that shows up in between the anchor tags. And then we have our ending anchor tag. This is something that's really helpful, especially with more and more people using their cell phones to browse the internet. When they go to your website, they can click on this and dial into your organization. List structures text into a itemized format. Now you've got a couple different formats you can set up. You can set an ordered list or an unordered list. Unordered list is going to put it in your text in bulleted sequence. So we use the UL and the /UL. So that's unordered list. That's the start and ending tags for an unordered list. Now, for each item, you would use the list tags, the LI and the closing LI. Okay, so that's going to list start and end of each tag. So, for example, we see here the pseudocode for this is we'd have the opening unordered list, our first item, our second item, and then we'd close the list. Now, to do unordered list, we use UL. To do ordered list, we use OL. And then the list items will be numbered as they are put in. For example, the first item will be list 1, 2, and so forth. So ordered list is going to put them in order using numbers or letters. We see an example here of an unordered list and an example of an ordered list. So the unordered list is going to have bullets. Ordered list will have the 1s, 2s, 3s, A, B, Cs. You can also add things to a list. For example, a description list that contains terms and descriptions. Think of it like terms and definitions. So you would use a DL open and close tags at the start and the end tags for the description list. Now in there, each term is going to be marked with a pair of the DT tags, and then each description or definition is going to be marked with the DD, open and close. So we see an example here. We've got our opening description list. If we open a tag, remember we have to close that tag. So then we have our first item, first term, and then we're going to put our definition for that first item. Then we'll follow with the second term with our open and close. And then they've also done that as well down here with our second definition, part 1 and part 2. So it gives you an example here. So we got our head element, header element, heading element as far as our terms, and then the definition for those are listed underneath. You can also embed a map on your web page. This gives visitors a clear view, clear path to the location. So you can use maps.google.com or MapQuest. But you can also place those maps inside of your web page. So for example, going to google.com, we type in an address. You'll see that you have a share button. Now when you share this, you've got some options of how to share a map. One, if you wanted to send a link, the link we pasted here, you can copy that link. Or you can options to share it on social media. You also have the options to embed a map. Okay, so the map will be generated in this area. The code for the map, you will have a choice here of the size. So you can set this, copy this map code, hit the copy HTML, and then just paste it into your browser. So we're going to look at one of the practice labs. For chapter 3, we're going to look at the apply your knowledge. We're going to add lists, images lists, and links to the web page. To save time, I'm going to copy and paste the code in as we go through this. All right, so first of all, let's look. This is our website as we start. So this is what we are looking at if we have not done anything to our assignment. So it says in this exercise, you will add an image, ordered list, description list, and links to the HTML web page. This is what our website should look like when we're finished. And as you can see, there's quite a big difference between the two. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close all these other files that I'm not currently working on and just deal with the index.html. So it says to update the comment with my name and file name and today's date. Also add your name to the paragraph element within the footer element. So I'm going to place my name here. I'm just going to put C3 and the date that I'm recording this video. Now down in the footer element, I'm going to place my name here as well. Okay, so I'm going to check this task. 2 of 4 were checked. Someone check, see what I missed. Code pattern. And so I didn't like the format I put the date in. So we're going to do this index.html. And we'll just say May 20th, 2021. Check this again. Okay. All right, so now I followed the instructions as it was written and it has passed this check. All right, so the next is nest an image element within the header element below. Apologize for the video. I've lost connection to the internet. All right, so within this, I'm going to nest an image element within the header element below the heading element. So I have a header element, then I see I've got my heading. So it says below this, I'm going to nest an image. Now it says in this image, I'm going to use the images webdesign.jpg for the value of the SRC attribute. So I'm placing the image tag in, put the SRC attribute for the images web design. So it's telling me I'm going to this folder. Specify the height and the width. To add my image. Now, I'm going to check this, let it run through the checks, and after this loads, I'm going to recheck my website. Okay, so this is what we started out with. Now I've added an image. So when I open this in a new browser tab, you'll see that I've now added this image. I can also just refresh this browser to reload my new code. So the image is loaded, and it specifies the size, the height and width in pixels. So once again, to add an image, I make sure I place it in the correct position. So it said to put it in the header element below the heading element. So I'll put the image tag. I'm then going to put the link to the file, my alt attribute, followed by my height and width attribute, and then make sure that I close that image tag there as well. All right, so now we're going to look at navigation. We're going to use the nav element. That's going to contain the navigation to our web page. And you see over here in our web page that this is breaking down and telling us what these tags are as well. So we see here that it says the nav. The nav element is used to contain navigation links to a web page. So we're going to add a relative link to the text of home, and that links to index.html. Then we're going to add a relative link to the text learn HTML, and that's going to link to the html.html file, which you'll see here. Then we'll add a relative link to learn CSS. It's going to link to the CSS HTML file, and finally one that's going to say learn JavaScript. So what the users are going to see is they're going to see the words home, learn HTML, learn CSS, and then finally learn JavaScript. And that's going to link to these files located here. So we see here that we've got use the nav area to hyperlink. So they've already got comments wrote in our code for us. They've already got the open and close tag. And they've also got the text that's going to be used by the users. See, currently right now there's no links to these. I can click on these texts and nothing happens but other than selection. So I'm just going to copy this and paste this in, and I'm just going to replace the whole tags in the interest of time. We'll run a search here, and we're going to break down through these. Okay, so we passed this. All right, now see, once again, until I reload this page, this is not going to update. So let's break down the links for our navigation. So I'm going to refresh this. We'll see now that we've got the links to these other web pages. So if I click on Learn HTML, that web page is now going to be loaded. Notice though that the links here does not work. Okay, so if I put a navigation on one page, I'm going to need to go add that to all of my other pages so that my navigation will work throughout my website. The great thing about navigation is once I place it here and it works and it takes me to the correct place, I can copy that and paste that code. So there's no reason to go back in and type all this back in. All right, so we'll break this down. First, we're going to start off, we've got the navigation links, which I actually have too many in here, so let me remove some of these. So I have the navigation links that's telling my web browser this is what it's going to be used for. This is my navigation. This is my menu. So in here, I'm going to have each thing broke down into I got it broke down to a paragraph. And in here, I've got the anchor tabs, my href, which is taking me to the desired web page that I want each link to link to. Okay, in here then the word home will appear. That's what the user will click on. If this code's after here, this is a space. This is the code for these little black squares. So these are the icons I'm placing in. And then another space. So I'm putting in artificial white space here to where there's nothing to click, but it's not everything jammed together. If I was to take this out, for example, you will see that that is now right up next to my word home. All right, so by placing this back in, let me get my spacing right here again. All right, so now I've placed that back in. So this is what the user sees and what they can click on. This is where the file is actually taking them when they click on this. All right, so my next task is to insert two new line breaks, two new blank lines after the starting main tag. And in here, I'm going to add a div element with the ID attribute value of template. And then I'm going to close that div after the paragraph element with the content. So let's start with going to find our main. So we find our main element here. So in here, I'm going to add a div element with the attribute ID of template. So let me place the two lines in first. 1, 2. Add the div ID of template. After I scroll through the paragraph elements here, I'm going to close this div. So check on this. Okay. Now you will see here, nothing's changed. Okay, because we haven't done anything to this yet. All right, we've just added a container around this text so that now we can break this away from the way the rest of the page is going to be formatted. All right, so the first thing we'll do is change the first paragraph element within the div with the template ID to an H3 element. So I'll look and I find my div and it's got the ID of template. And I'm going to change the first paragraph in here to H3. Now if I change the opening, once again I have to change the closing. Run my check. Passes, we're going to look and see what happened. So we see that now that the steps to create a web page template is now been changed from a paragraph element to a heading 3. Okay, but so we can see here that by changing this, we are just working on this div element here. Our next step is to change the remaining paragraph elements within the div element with the ID of template to list items. And now we're going to make those an ordered list. So what we're going to do here first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an ordered list. So an ordered list puts us in order with, say, 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C. So it makes it sequential. And we want this within our div element. All right, so now this will be rendered as an ordered list. But we still have some more changes to do. But we'll look at this, see that we have had some changes here, but you'll notice that these are not numbered just yet because I have not defined these as a list item. So I'm going to change these all to list items. And before I change them all, we're just going to look at one and see what happens when I change one. So now we see that this one does have the number 1 beside it. All right, so in the interest of time, instead of changing all of these individually, I'm just going to copy and paste. And then we'll look at our updated code, and we'll see that now everything is formatted correctly as list items. We'll run our check here. All right, so I skipped something. Okay, I need to put, I didn't skip anything. I just need to put the blank space here. This is just for, even though it didn't really change anything and it didn't count off, this is to make my code easier to read. So I can see that I've got an ordered list, and it makes it easier to see. Inside this window on MonTap, sometimes it does get hard to see your code, so you will have to do a lot of scrolling or readjusting your code as you go through this. Okay, so now I'm going to insert 2 blank lines after the closing div tag. I'm going to add a div element with the ID attribute value, a semantic, and I'm going to close that div element. All right, so the closing div tag is the one I've been working on. So I add 2 lines, and then I'm going to add the div tag with the ID of semantic. Once again, it's just a container. And so I'm going to close this after I see visit w3schools.com. Content. Okay, so once again, I'm doing the same thing again. I'm going to change this to an H3. We'll see how it's changed over here. So now that my sections are broken up into different divs, check this. So in here, I'm going to change the paragraph elements within the text from header, nav, and main and footer to the descriptive terms. So I'm going to put DT. So in here, I'm going to look, and in place of the P, I'm going to place these in here. Make sure that you have the correct letters written in, that you have the closing elements as well. All right, so now I've got my definition terms listed there, my DTs. Now I'm going to put my definitions in. So I would just change all of these paragraphs to the DDs. And that should be it on that one. Unless I missed something. Let me look and see what I missed. So again, if you open a tag, make sure you close that tag. All right. So at the same time, I'm just going to copy the. I found what I missed. That should fix everything there. So it is very easy when you're working with web design to overlook tags, especially if you're doing something like we're doing here. We're changing the tags values. Troubleshooting your website, that's about 90% of web design. Or once you get web site designed, going back through and troubleshooting it, that's a big part of this. So really check your code. As you see, it's very easy to overlook, one element. All right, so the next part is to wrap and nest the descriptive terms and elements with a descriptive definition element within the div with the idea semantics. So I'm still working in this area here. So I want to make sure that I put the DL in here. So, and this is also if necessary, insert a blank line between the closing description list. Down here, which I've already got the closing in. So I'm going to put the opening descriptive list in. Okay, so we're going to go to the last page of this. So it says in the last paragraph element, add an absolute link to the text w3schools.com. It's going to link to this website here. So we have the text here to visit the W3 Schools to learn more about HTML semantic elements. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to copy this and we'll go through this. Run the check real quick. So in here we'll see that we got the word visit in our footer element. Or I'm sorry, in this last paragraph tag, we got the word visit. And inside of this, we're putting a link. Okay, so they will still see the W3 schools and then follow with the rest of the text. So when we look at this, you will see on your web page, visit and then the W3 schools, which is going to take you to their web page. Okay, and the rest of this is just paragraph text. Okay, so this is the only text that we've really added a link to. When we look back at our code here, so we got our opening paragraph text tag, the text to visit. We put an anchor tag in with the href that's taking us to this website. And then we close our opening tag. w3schools.com is the text that the user will see. We're going to close the anchor tag, and then we're going to finish out with the rest of that paragraph elements. Okay, the rest of your practice lab is, in this case, is to update the CSS file, HTML file, to add the same image and nav links, and update the p tag. So what I'm going to do is we will start up here with the CSS file. So I'm going to open this up. And the first thing it says to do is to update this, include my name, file name, and today's date, and the multi-line comment. Then add the same image and the nav links, and then the same for the paragraph. So what I'm going to do is I would just come in, copy, and paste this information in. And I'm going to do this for each one since I've already got this copied. And I know that's going to be required for each one of these tasks. So the next thing was to add the same image and the same navigation. So we'll place this in here and make sure I have them in the correct place. I'm just going to copy what's there or highlight what's there and paste over it. And finally is to update the paragraph element in the footer with my name. So I want to run these checks on these 3 pages. And I didn't do something correct. Okay, one thing I need to make sure I do is I change this to the correct file name for each one of these. So now when I check these, they should pass the validation on here. So I can check my grade so that I've got 100% on this. Refresh this web page. Now you can see that my navigation works on each one of my web pages, and they each have the same design, the same image up here as well. All right, so that's going to wrap up chapter 3. If you have any questions, please reach out and send me an email.